For a long time, Joey Bart was considered the Giants' best overall prospect. He was the number 2 overall pick not very long ago. And many evaluators had him as a top 10 or top 15, certainly, prospect in Major League Baseball. But after a miserable debut, his stock has fallen. And today, FanGraphs released their top Giants prospect list, and Bart ranks 6th in the organization. So we'll talk about FanGraphs' list and Bart's fall next.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on this show we provide episodes 3 days a week for now, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, and I'm a lifelong fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, so please check us out there if you have not already. And as I said, coming up on today's show, FanGraphs released their top 39 Giants prospects list today, and we are going to talk about it. Coming up later in the week, we're going to give you updates on the lockout. The league and the players are meeting today on Tuesday, so we'll have that for you probably tomorrow on Wednesday, and then we're going to have a mailbag later in the week. But jumping into the Giants' top prospects list by FanGraphs, this is a list that does not conform to the status quo. It is very different than many other publications in terms of the order of players, and there are some big surprises. So let's just go right through it. Number 1, there's no change. There's no big surprise. It continues to be 20-year-old shortstop Marco Luciano. And the write-up on Luciano goes as follows. After adding nearly 30 pounds of muscle since his last minor league season, 2021 was our first glimpse of Luciano's new square-shouldered frame in action. His explosive bat speed is still remarkable, perhaps even more so than in 2019, with his added strength supplying even more power potential to his natural uppercut swing. He put that power on Front Street at Low A, hitting 18 home runs and 14 doubles and a 138 weighted runs created plus over his 70 games there. His walk rate stayed in the double digits, and while his strikeout rate was inflated compared to his previous seasons, it was still of little concern given the way he was hitting. But upon his promotion to Eugene, where he became the youngest player in High-A West, Luciano struggled to adapt to the more advanced pitching, particularly breaking balls away. He's never been particularly strikeout prone, but in his first 5 High-A games, he fanned 13 times in 23 plate appearances without recording a walk. Meanwhile, his arm accuracy has not improved enough for him to project as a long-term shortstop. His likely relocation from a premium up-the-middle position, combined with his High-A growing pains, is enough to keep him from being considered baseball's best prospect, an honorific that, had both of these factors broken more in his favor, seemed possible as of last year's report. But his bat still provides more than enough potential to project him as a future Major League All-Star. So it's more of the same. We see evaluators having basically the same opinions of Luciano across the board. Many think he's going to have to move off of shortstop at some point, but that the bat is good enough that it will play at third base or even in the outfield. But I think the Giants are going to keep him at shortstop as long as possible, as long as he can do it. And the caveat with all of these prospect evaluation reports is that they don't really know anything. Like, we can think that we know, but there's always players who come up and do something completely different than what people expected, and vice versa. I mean, I mentioned Joey Bart, and we'll talk about him in just a second. People had him as like a can't-miss top impact performing prospect. And now suddenly, after just like 30 games at the major league level, and then a continuation of some of those trends in 2021 at the minor league level, people have completely jumped ship on Joey Bart. And so I just take these with a grain of salt. Like, you can say, this is his ceiling, this is what he's going to be, he's going to have to move off this position, but changes are always possible. And that's kind of the key to modern baseball. Like, something to always keep in mind is that development changes everything, can change everything. And we saw it with the influence of the Giants hitting coaches. Players that might have otherwise had a much lower ceiling suddenly became big-time contributors thanks to adjustments that were made from a development standpoint. So the fact is, Luciano has the tools to be a star, and that is something that prospect evaluators can agree on. But let's just tell you the next few names and then talk about the Joey Bart situation. So Luis Matos comes in at number 2, and his rise continues to be a real bright spot for the Giants in their farm system. And we're going to get to his full write-up in a minute. Very interestingly, Patrick Bailey, the catcher the Giants took with their first-round pick in 2020, he comes in at number 3 in their system, followed by Kyle Harrison, the starter, Elliot Ramos at number 5, and Joey Bart number 6. So what a fall it has been for Joey Bart, who, like I said, was considered one of the best prospects in the game, and certainly one of the top 2 prospects in the Giants organization. And so my point is maybe that we've overcorrected a little bit too much on Joey Bart based on kind of a small sample. But also, as I have said all offseason long, what does this mean for the Giants at the catcher position? Because Buster Posey is gone. Joey Bart currently projects at the top of their depth chart. So what if we see a repeat of 2020 in 2022 from Joey Bart? What are the Giants going to do? So we'll read Bart's write-up and talk about the Giants' plans at the catcher position next. But first, it's the new year, and that means New Year's resolutions. If yours is about getting fit and whose isn't, and eating healthier, make sure you include Built Bar in your plan. Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, maybe even better than a candy bar, and they make it easier to stick to your resolution. It tastes so good you'll want to eat it, unlike other protein bars which can be chalky, waxy, or taste like a chemical spill. You want to eat healthy, it just gets so boring. Certainly by February 1st, you might be thinking, this isn't worth it, where's the chocolate? Maybe you're long past that point already. Well, Built Bars are covered in 100% chocolate, and most contain just 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar to go along with 17 grams of protein. Go to BuiltBar.com, use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at BuiltBar.com. This episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure the often pointless and seemingly intimidating questioning? Is your Odyssey an LX or an EX? And wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing the only brand their warehouse happens to carry. You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. Why choose to spend 30, 50, even 100% more for the exact same parts from a chain store or car dealership? Random example, Honda Odyssey fuel pump is $353 from a chain store and just $216 from Rock Auto. Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Their prices are reliably low for every customer. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. All right, here we go. We are going to continue talking about this FanGraphs write-up of the Giants farm system. This was conducted by Kevin Goldstein and Tess Taruskin. I'm probably butchering that last name. Sorry, Tess. But Kevin Goldstein is a former front office member with the Houston Astros, and I don't know much about tests, but it's not, normally this is done by Eric Longenhagen or Kylie McDaniel in the past. So it's a little bit different, and that could explain some of the differences in these rankings. Like having Patrick Bailey third is a big change from the status quo for like most prospect evaluators. So it is interesting. And having Joey Bart falling is kind of normal. We've seen that actually a lot from most evaluators. But let's just jump right into that. Thanks again, though, for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available on all platforms. But the write-up on Bart goes as follows. Bart was seen as one of the best catching prospects in the game, getting a golden opportunity to prove himself in 2020 when Buster Posey opted out of the COVID-shortened season. 2 years later, he's once again being given the chance to prove he's the answer behind the plate for San Francisco, but the questions about his future are both more numerous and much louder. Bart is a massive human being with immense strength, but at times his size works against him, with multiple scouts believing that his bulk leaves him a touch behind the speed of the game on both offense and defense. Further hampering Bart are swing decisions that were among the worst in all of baseball during his 2020 big league debut and showed little progress back at AAA last year as he whiffed at a nearly 30% clip and continues to be prone to wild chases. He moves well for his size and receives and throws well, projecting as an average defender if not a tick above, but his future is going to come down to his bat. There's a low average, high power catcher in here, but he's masked by the disastrous approach that has the potential to be Bart's undoing. With Posey retired, 2022 represents a make or break year for 2018's number 2 overall pick. And honestly, I think that this hits the nail on the head. I have been pretty down on Joey Bart for a while. I mean, what we saw in 2020 was disastrous. And the other factor, though, is that it was a very small sample and he was rushed. Remember, though, I always want to bring this up. Remember how people were with their pitchforks ready to burn down the gates at Oracle Park because Joey Bart wasn't immediately on that 2020 roster after Posey opted out. People thought that he was ready and the Giants were just featuring or utilizing service time manipulation in order to gain extra service over Bart by holding him down. Zaidi and the Giants front office said they didn't think he was quite ready, and look what happened. I mean, he was definitely not ready. And I mean, the fact is, though, he is 25 years old already, and so he's basically done just about everything he can do at the minor league level. He's reached AAA. He had I want to say a full season. He only played in 67 games there due to some injuries, but he struck out 29% of the time there in AAA, and that just doesn't really bode well for a jump to the major league level, and his walk rate was not particularly good. He needed a 398 average on balls in play just to achieve 7% above average offense. So I don't see a lot of reasons for optimism about him just showing up at the major league level and suddenly not having the same kind of swing decision, disastrous approach issues that we saw in 2020. The one thing that I mentioned earlier is the development element, and I think that the Giants have it in spades, particularly with their hitting coaches. And I don't know, like they should be able, there's got to be some technique that they can utilize to try to help a player make better swing decisions, not chase wildly out of the zone at breaking balls in the dirt. He was also exploited with fastballs up and in, and it's going to be a challenge, and the Giants are going to have to figure this out, because if Bart is truly the answer and they're going to give him this opportunity, what happens if we see more of what we saw in 2020? The obvious answer is that you have to send Bart back down. He's not a guy who's out of minor league options, certainly, and so they would send him down, but then currently their depth chart is Curt Casali after that. And so they would have a big problem. If Curt Casali is your everyday kind of catcher, that's just not going to happen. So they're going to have to do something. And it is interesting that Patrick Bailey ranks third in this Giants top prospects list by FanGraphs. So why don't we read that review so we can kind of get a better sense of the Giants' current depth chart through their organization at the catcher position. So Bailey, like I said, ranks third behind Luciano and Matos, and the write-up goes as follows. Between Buster Posey hanging up his chest protector this offseason and a relative cooling on Joey Bart, Bailey seems a likely and necessary role player for the Giants as they phase into the post-Posey era of catching in San Francisco. A first-rounder in 2020 out of North Carolina State, Bailey made his pro debut in 2021 after struggling at High-A while dealing with a back issue and then taking a couple of games in the complex league to regroup. He landed at what seemed a more comfortable level at Low-A San Jose. After a couple of weeks of gradual return to form, Bailey was sidelined with a concussion in mid-August, then came back to absolutely demolish the competition for the remaining 4 weeks of the season. Bailey went 39 for 99 with 6 homers, 11 doubles, and a whopping 1146 OPS, good for a 193 weighted runs created plus over his last 25 games. Then hit 292, 375 on base, 417 slugging while picking up reps in the fall league. A switch hitter with rare feel for contact from both sides, Bailey prefers a gap approach from the right side while favoring a pull/lift approach from the left. Unlike other young guys whose bat control results in a swing-happy approach, Bailey sometimes sways too far in the opposite direction and can be overly selective, bordering on passive. So that's the write-up. And to me, this is a much better prospect. Like when you're talking about a guy who has a lot of patience, bordering on passiveness, which reminds me of some people's reactions to Brandon Belt at times, right? 2 strike count, pitches on the outer part, outside corner at the knees, and he just takes it for strike 3. People, again, pitchforks ready to burn the whole house down because of this approach. But guess what? The Giants love that approach in Belt, and I'm sure they love it in Bailey as well. You don't want to be too passive, but looking for your pitch and not swinging unless it's there is kind of a hallmark of what this front office wants. And it's hard to argue with the results. I mean, at the major league level in 2021, that was kind of across the board their approach, and look at the results. They hit more home runs than they've ever hit. They won 107 games, more than they've ever won. And yeah, I mean, that's why I say if this front office was in place in 2018, I'm not sure they would have drafted Joey Bart. I believe Jonathan India did he go 3rd overall? I might just be completely wrong with even the year on Jonathan India. But look at Jonathan India, just won Rookie of the Year, very patient hitter, a lot of contact. So I'm just not sure they would have even picked Bart. And so Patrick Bailey is a much more modern San Francisco Giants type of player. And so it is really interesting to have these 2 first-round catcher picks in their system simultaneously. Bailey, like the write-up said, he started in High-A and then really struggled, and then went to the complex league for 2 games and then to Low-A. So he dropped a level even though he was a college player. So he's already going to be 23 in May of this year. So I would imagine he'll probably start at High-A again, although I'm not entirely sure. Maybe they start him at Low-A again and let him tear it up and then promote him. But he's obviously further behind than Bart. He's not ready to just jump right in and be a major league catcher in 2022. So there's still time left on Patrick Bailey, but it is interesting, and it is interesting to see a really positive write-up because the season did not start off well for Bailey. He just really struggled in his pro debut in High-A Eugene. So anyway, coming up next, we're just going to continue to kind of run through some of the highlights. We'll talk about Luis Matos, Kyle Harrison, and perhaps Elliot Ramos as well. So stay tuned for that. But first, there might be less football being played, but betonline.net has way more odds and info for this playoff season. From scores, totals, player performance props, to where the next fired coach is going to land, BetOnline is the #1 spot for all things NFL betting in 2022. And it's not just football. BetOnline.net's basketball, hockey, boxing, and UFC odds coverage is the best in the business. From sports right down to your favorite Vegas casino games, BetOnline is your #1 online wagering destination. BetOnline, the fastest and easiest way to wager on all your favorite sports and play your favorite games. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, as promised, we're just going to wrap up this discussion of FanGraphs releasing their Giants top 39 prospects list. The next thing to look forward to from FanGraphs is their release of the top 100 overall prospects list. I imagine that's going to be done once every team's top 100 list is released. And right now there are a lot of teams to go. They're only about eyeballing it a third of the way through all of the teams. But we'll have that for you when it comes out. Let's just read the write-up on Luis Matos, because he continues to be a guy who's just risen. His stock has risen, and I would imagine he's going to get a pretty solid ranking in FanGraphs' top 100 list. He was on Baseball Americas. He was on Baseball Prospectuses. I think Baseball Prospectus had Matos like 20th or 30th, something like that. And eventually we'll probably talk about their list as well. And Keith Law with The Athletic just came out with his top 100. And Matos was also ranked as the Giants' second best prospect behind Luciano. So his stock has certainly risen, and here's the write-up from FanGraphs. Matos had a tremendous 2021. He spent the season at Low-A San Jose, where he slashed .313, .358, .494. That was good for a 121 weighted runs created plus, and Low-A West MVP honors, all before his 20th birthday, which occurred a few days before publication. He struck out in a minuscule 12.4% of his at-bats with a 41% fly ball rate. He still demonstrates freaky rotational ability and can smack his barrel into the ball no matter what hitting zone it's in. His ability to connect with whatever the pitcher hurls his way leads to a relatively common profile for a hitter his age, as Matos swings more often than he should, rather than waiting for the pitches he can really punish. His walk rate was only 5.7% in 2021, though it did trend upward toward the end of the season, and his BABIP, batting average on balls in play, was unsustainably high, so refining his pitch selection will be a key part of his progression toward the higher levels of the minors. There's huge ceiling here, that of a center fielder with a potent combination of hit and power, but the pitch selection piece of Matos's profile is a little bit concerning and is keeping him in the 50 future value tier for now. So 50 future value is on the 20 to 80 scouting scale. 80, very rare. I think that Wander Franco of the Rays got an 80, but it's very rare for a prospect to get an 80 ranking. Matos comes in with a 50 and Marco Luciano a 55, which is a little bit disappointing given that I think last year they had him at a 60. But again, this is where I take it with a grain of salt. You know, the Giants have their own evaluations. They have their own player development plans in place. And what they write, what FanGraphs writes on February 1st, 2021, for a guy who's 20 years old and in the low levels of the minors, things change. These are never static. They change. And so what excites me is what they talked about. Strikeout rate of 12.4% to go along with 15 home runs, 21 stolen bases, and a center fielder's profile. So it's becoming increasingly clear to me that Luis Matos and Marco Luciano are, in fact, the best prospects in the Giants system. They are younger. Both are just 20 years old. Both ended the year. Actually, Matos spent the whole year in San Jose. Luciano was promoted to High-A. But I would not be surprised if both start the year in High-A Eugene. Man, that team is going to be a lot of fun because Patrick Bailey's probably also going to be there, and others. So the Giants farm system just continues to be more and more exciting by the year. And for me, I just really like what I see from Luis Matos. Again, the kind of chasing is a concern, but when you're making so much contact and you have power and you have speed and you're a center fielder, there's just a lot to like there. But of course, yeah, he obviously in a perfect world, he would refine that approach a little bit and would be less of a free swinger. So actually, that is all the time we have for today. No time to get to Kyle Harrison, who ranks number 4, Elliot Ramos number 5, Bart 6th, Gregory Santos, who made his Major League debut for the Giants in 2021 and then was suspended for PEDs, comes in at number 7. Hunter Bishop 8th, Will Bednar, the Giants' first round pick from 2021, comes in at number 9, and then Jairo Pomares comes in at number 10. So we'll probably read through the ones we didn't get to at a later date. Coming up tomorrow, we're going to talk about today's round of negotiations between the MLBPA and the league as they continue to try to come to a new deal, but don't expect one anytime soon. But we'll talk about the latest on tomorrow's Locked On Giants. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out tremendously, so thank you in advance, and thank you to everyone who's done so already. I can't wait to be with you again tomorrow. Thanks so much for listening today. Stay Locked On Giants.